Hello everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast. This audio podcast as part of the Pondering. This audio podcast as part of a Bostix Blitzar and the specials. This audio podcast as part of the Convey and Maverick, and this audio podcast as part of a ZtormLabostix production. So, as part of this series, now going into some of the symptomology aspects of this case study, and and as part of this works from a science student, R. Goodwin, from a particular academic institution in the United Kingdom. So, in as part of this audio podcast, and looking at some of the symptomology in around this case study, in as part of looking at sort of a systematic review or basis of the neurological condition Parkinson's in a male patient case study. The patient case underwent neurological investigation consisting of symptom review along with several motor or central nervous system examination or investigation to evaluate elements of severity. The patient case in this male patient case, as R. Goodwin has highlighted that the patient case the patient case had visual spatial issues, some challenges in around sort of those those important motor functions or in around those bases, and therefore it is where a physician in this patient case looked to score ataxia, and proprioception to determine or establish the level of deterioration. The cranial nerves will also be individually stimulated to identify a localized lesion on the brain stem, and due to each cranial nerve having very specific function abnormality recorded in one of these areas, strongly would suggest an issue with a particular nerve or particular nerves. So whilst many diagnoses had been ruled out as part of this patient case study, R. Goodwin informs that due to the complexity of the nervous system and the central nervous system and the male patient in this case being of a certain age, from a certain age population, the conditions may present certain aspects of the conditions in around for example, again in around aspects of Parkinson's, for example, may present themselves sort of later in life. However, from the symptoms or symptomology and investigations, and from some of the analyses, it is probable, or it had been probable, that the patient case had been suffering from actually been suffering from the symptomologies aligned to Parkinson's or Parkinson's disease. At the same time, Parkinson, and as part of the literature, and as R. Goodwin, the science student, informs in around this works, Parkinsonism shares similarities symptomatically with other other neurological conditions, and the hallmark excuse me, the hallmark symptomologies of Parkinson's include mainly in around bradykinesia, which bradykinesia displayed by patient displayed by the in around this patient case. Nonetheless, there were no investigations for non-genetic Parkinson's, and negative analysis will be probable to arise from investigations performed, and it is usually diagnosed through for example, patient clinical history. In many cases, aspects of pharmacotherapeutics can be started or prescribed, for example, excuse me, and some improvements from this from some specific sort of pharmacotherapeutics can help support some of the diagnoses or the bases of Parkinson's, in around some of the to sort of alleviate or to sort of relieve some of the symptomologies and as part of the diagnoses of Parkinson's. So that draws this audio podcast to a close. This audio podcast is part of the Pondering. This audio podcast is part of the Bostix, Blitzar, and the Specials. This audio podcast is part of the Convey, the Maverick. This audio podcast is part of a ZtormLabostix production.